Good morning, Nicky. It's Wednesday. Actually, it's nighttime. I'm lying. So, in your last video, you talked about depression and gratitude, and it's been so long since I've been depressed that now when I talk about it, it often feels like I'm making it up. But I can relate to everything that you spoke to in your last video. Actually, before we jump into the deep topic of depression, I wanted to talk about the step challenge that my work is currently doing. So I've been going nuts walking. I'm talking about absolutely nuts. Here, I'm going to insert the chart of my averages and the company averages. And I think it's safe to say I'm in the lead, but averages hide externalities, so we will see. Also, I'm sorry about your stub toe, but I have blisters on my feet, so I definitely feel your pain. All right, now back to the topic of depression. So you talked about waking up, and most of the time I find it interesting that when we talk about depression, it is almost always associated with laying in bed. At least whenever I talk to Dad about it, Vince, or even when it's characterized in a movie, it's often someone under the covers in bed, not wanting to get out. So when I remember whenever I was depressed, it was the feeling of first waking up and not knowing why to get out of bed, just like you said, and just literally waking up crying and feeling like, hoping that it was going to be different this day and that I wasn't going to feel the same I did the day before, and it felt eternal. So I think, the coupling of, feeling that it's inescapable and, it's a perpetual feeling that you'll never be able to escape makes depression so utterly unbearable. And now that I'm 10 years later and I'm actually pretty happy with my life, it seems like such a foreign state of mind to be in, but yet I can relate to people whenever they discuss it because I remember being there despite not really feeling that way anymore. It's kind of like the opposite of depression, like love, where you don't really know what it feels like to be in love whenever you're outside of it. You don't really remember what you miss. And I guess that's a blessing and a curse of both depression and love. I wish I had more things to say about depression, and I'm not really sure of the way to get out of it except just waiting it out. Having enough people in my life to not give up on me. So you talked about certain things that you're grateful for. Some of them are pretty cliche, like your children. Of course, that's a given. Money to support yourself and a place to sleep, and maybe those are a little bit cliche because they're taken for granted in our society. And I'm definitely grateful for all those things too, besides children, which I don't have. I'm grateful for the nephews that I do have, so thank you for that. The things I'm most grateful today are for having a passion and feeling like I actually have a purpose in life, and waking up every day excited about pursuing that passion. And currently it is learning computers and learning programming and learning about electronics and circuitry and trying to figure out how to combine all those and to make useless and yet very entertaining gadgets. And I'm working on a very rudimentary design right now. I'm just turning on and off a RGB light that cycles randomly through colors, and that you can change the brightness with. And I most of that came from directly following a tutorial, but I kind of deviated from the tutorial and went my own route, and so I'm pretty excited that it turned out the way it did. I'll insert a clip of that right now. It's pretty lame, but it's just the beginning. There's endless possibilities that you can do. And this is the book that I'm reading to help me walk me through the process. But there are so many cool things you can do with the Arduino board that allows you to run the same code over and over and over again, and then react based on inputs to that code to affect outputs. I'm also, grateful for the job that I have that kind of inspired this passion, and that I was able to get the job because of people I met at Sonic. What the fuck is that? I'm also grateful for the education that I received, in my 8 years at college, getting my 4-year degree. I'm grateful for the teachers and that were both mentors and inspirations, throughout my journey, including John Dirk, who was my government teacher at Lone Star. And on the topic of college, I also am grateful that I paid off my student debt, and I decided to look up some of the statistics, and I was surprised to learn that the majority of student debt, more than 80% of it, is actually below $50,000. Oftentimes, whenever people talk about student debt and they say how careless people are about, borrowing money, they always throw out the most exaggerated claims about people borrowing over $100,000, for some degree that's not going to pay them for anything. You realize that they don't know what the hell they're talking about, and that the stats don't support those exceptions rather than the general rule. I find it very interesting that people often fixate on the fringes of an issue rather than the general issue itself, to try to divert people's proposals of how to solve the issues. And talking about proposals, I decided just to look at one candidate's plan, Elizabeth Warren's, and just take a look at it. And, it's basically pretty simple. It's to tax the super rich, multi-billionaire people and use that money to pay off the people who are trying to get an education for themselves. And, I think maybe her plan is a little bit, it's not detailed enough. I do think that at least it's on her platform. You also mentioned a quote from Elie Wiesel's book Night, where the person asks, "Where is God?" and the person responded, "God's right there on the gallows." This is not the exact quote, but to paraphrase it. And it's funny enough, I actually read that book as extra credit assignment in college and wrote a short 1-page essay on it. So in that reflection piece that I wrote about Night, I found it a fitting quote, where Eli talks about a thought that he had when he first arrived at Auschwitz. The last time Eli prayed to God was thanking him for creating mud that covered his new shoes so they wouldn't be taken away. How can the human mind be so grateful in abject misery? And I think that just sums up, just the perspective of gratefulness, and why some things people are grateful for are so trivial in other people's eyes, because it's all a matter of perspective. And, some people are grateful just to have their next meal or to find clean water, while, I take those things for granted. And also on the topic of politics, there was a video released by the YouTuber CPG Gray, who talks about, this secret plan to use the Electoral College to, circumvent the Electoral College, meaning that, they're trying to recruit states, individual states, to sign a pledge to basically vote against what the state says if it's in line with the majority of what the people in all of the United States voted for, meaning that the popular vote would, in fact, elect the president. I personally agree with it. Most people who didn't study political science disagree with it. But yeah, I'll link that in the doobly-doo below. On a final note, you talked about being grateful about Dad being able to go to China, and I agree. I am very happy that he got to go, and I was happy that I was in a position to help him get there. And I'm not sure if he told you the story yet, but it was absolutely insane driving him to the airport. So we didn't go to sleep at all the night before because he was trying to get a PowerPoint done. I was packing his luggage, of course, last minute for everything. So we ended up getting there an hour and a half early, which is okay. Maybe a little bit earlier for an international flight would have been better. Anyways, when we get there, the little kiosk thing, of course, didn't work, so we had to go through the long line. And then the person was like, "Listen, your reservation was canceled. You don't have a ticket." And my heart just absolutely just sunk. And I was actually terrified that Dad wasn't going to make it to China, and that was going to devastate him. And it's going to be devastating to me because of how much work and effort he put in to this trip. So at the last minute, he's trying to call the number and it's some weird Chinese number, and of course it didn't work. So I just was like, all right, well, try to email them. And Luckily, the person who was organizing the event, saw his email and was able to provide him with information of a new ticket that they purchased but never sent to him for some reason. And he literally was the last person on the plane, literally seconds to spare. I'm so grateful for all the little events that got him there and all the little events that, held that trip together, because I do think that it transformed him into being a more, cosmopolitan person, for someone who wears a cowboy hat wherever he goes. So I am very grateful. All right. Bye. One last thing. So, of course, I kind of responded to things about depression and gratitude, and I think those are really great topics and ones that we should explore in future videos. Anyways, I kind of want to give you at least a talking point for your next video, and talked a lot about things that I find very exciting and my newfound interest in programming and electronics and computers in general. So I'm just curious of what topics have sparked your interest or any newfound passions that you may discovered. And all right, I hope you enjoy the video. I look forward to what you respond to.